Hi, this is Seamless, and today I'm going to talk about a track that I'm working on that has some cool basses in it. So before I get to whatever, I'm going to show you the track, and then I'll talk about the bass. In particular, I really am focusing on what's going on more or less here. So here is track. It's really very loud. So if you're turned up, I would advise you to turn down. That's my opinion. So playing in 3, 2, 1. And I'll just play only the bass for this part here. It's totally a drum pattern right there. So smart. I guess also this is useful. Right. Well, you get the idea. So, what's going on here is that these are all harmors. They're all live harmors, for that matter. There's no resampling. There's no resampling going on. This is all straight up. That's actually a separate. There's two going on right now. There's the main bass, which is running in these patterns, and then the ending phrase is mostly this guy. So what's going on here is actually a technique that I bring up a lot when I talk about Harmor and kind of doing things. And that's basically this is your standard like drum and bass type Reese, which is it's two saws or squares, basically two waveforms that are detuned and then distorted. Now, what's special about the Harmor is that you can mess around with how the unison works. I'm detuning it by using unison. I'm not actually playing two waves at once. It's just one of the waves, but then I'm applying unison to it, which for most synths is more or less you're playing two voices. You're playing more than one voice. I have said two. I like using two. You can use more than two. It just seems that two offers the most contrast, and you want that contrast for doing the Reese type stuff, because that's the pitch difference is what causes the warble. That warble is the result of the pitch difference. And if you have more than one voice, the difference is on average less because there's more voices in between the gap of the pitch difference. And then of course you distort it, which is what I'm doing. And yeah, that's your basic Reese type right there. But the advanced stuff happens when you mess around with the unison pitch amount over the spectrum. And I brought this up, and I'm going to try to explain this again because I feel like I haven't been doing a good job explaining this, and I'm probably not going to do much better now, but I will try anyway. Let's take the main bass, for example. I have actually a pseudo frequency split. I'm running it into this other channel that's only the highs, and then reverbing and chorusing it to add extra definition to the high. But actually, I'm gonna actually go and make a new one. The reason why I was showing off those is because as you'll see when I make a new one, very minor differences make very large differences in the sound. Very minor changes to the parameter that's important here makes very large differences in the sound. And so I have a whole bunch of different ones because I saved them as I found them to be cool, and that's what I would suggest you do as well. Because what's likely to happen is that you'll get a sound you think is cool. It's cool, and then you mess around some more and you find some other one, but then you want to go back to the other one, and then you kind of have a hard time doing that. And then maybe eventually you might gain greater mastery over what parts of the spectrum do versus others, but largely just save sample like I look at the preset lists here. See up here with December, DNB, which is the name of this project file. I have 1, 2, and 3, which are mostly just iterations of the main bass. I haven't moved more than one of the alternate ones. So okay, so you got your 1. Now by default, Harmor makes a saw wave. And if you're looking up at the monitor up here, you might have seen that doesn't look at all like a saw wave. That's because I'm running lots of compression and stuff like that, and that's doing a good job of screwing with the wave. However, it still sounds the same, and it won't sound all that different to you when you do it yourself without compression. So, okay, let's go to classic just because, and turn it down to 2. That's the default. I'm going to turn the phase to 0 because I don't want it to really blend. I want the difference to be very, very apparent. Also, bring the pan down. I turned the pitch up kind of high. And if you've ever, done the Reese thing, that sound is very familiar to you. Now, Harmor's distortion options are like the coolest I've ever seen, and I don't really. That's not really saying a lot. I haven't really been like a huge connoisseur of like I haven't used any of the Fab plugins like Saturn or like whatever multi-band distortion stuff that they got, which I'm assuming is pretty sweet, but I've never used it. So the results that I get out of this is basically just because of what Harmor's distortion shapes the wave to be. But if you're familiar with plugins that you like to use better, you should try them because they might be cool. But I tend to use Cube, and this is what it sounds like. Pretty normal. Now, here's where changes come in. You open this up, you go to harmonic, hues, and pitch. And as I described before, what this window does is it changes the pitch thickness across the spectrum. See over here, it's 1 octave, 3 octaves, 6 octaves. I'm looking up here to the information bar showing you what the octaves are, and that's the range at which you're changing it. So like over here, so if I were to it's also important to note that this is by octave and not by frequency range, and that's because if I were to turn this off here, that would only turn off the pitch thickness of the fundamental of every tone that you play. So that's the fundamental up there, and that's the fundamental down there. So if this were a frequency spectrum, then this would basically be like a filter. It'd be like a high pass filter, but it's like a keyboard. It's like a KB tracked high pass filter. And my voice is distorting because I have distortion on the master compressor. Distort, 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 distort. It's not gonna do it again. It never does it when I want to do it on purpose. Anyway, get rid of that. See, I just made a seriously minute change there. Like that's not where it was originally. And this is what it is originally, where everything is 100% even. And that means that the octave here and the octave here are being, like, if I put a point here, these points and all the ranges in between are being unison by the same pitch, all the same pitch. So now if I do this, it means that up through here and through here, these ranges are slightly increasing in pitch thickness, not amount, not the amount of the effect. It's the density of the. It's weird. It's not the amount of effect. It's the range. Well, whatever. It's the pitch thickness. It's the thickness of the effect. Basically, it's as if this point here had a higher pitch value, and that does some seriously screwy things when you're not even when you're distorting it. Like if I were to take distortion off. You can kind of hear a weird squelch going on. If I were to remove that, normal sound, bring this back, crazy weird squelch. And then when you distort that, I just get rid of it. I did. Whoa, crazy sound. Now, what I tend to do, what this is usually good for, is that let's say you don't want to unison the low frequencies or the fundamental harmonic of your note. So that basically means that the bass of the note is static. It's the same. So there's more bass definition, and then the rest of it kind of just goes. You can do that, and then of course if you make small changes, just wow, it's just crazy. And I had been experimenting by enabling step editing, turning off snap, and then just. And you might think to yourself, huh, this is some kind of weird, like, vocally things going on in there, like vowely formant type weirdness going on. And that's interesting because like it's not on purpose. Like I'm not. It's not like whatever I'm not doing it on purpose, but it's because of like if you ever looked at the spectrum analysis of like an FM format based sound, you see that the vowel forms are being, or the vowel formats are being formed by when sections bands of the frequency are moving closer together and farther apart. Like there's two bands like here and here, and then that's like open, and then they move together, and then that movement, that modulation creates the format kind of sound. And that's basically what's happening when you mess around with the pitch thickness of a unison, is that it's making the bands, the partials, the harmonic partials move together closer. You can even see what's going on right now. So something got crunched together, something got pulled apart. And that is basically what I've been doing in this track. So it kind of sounds like there's modulation going on, like especially here, like it seems rather rhythmic. And don't really have a whole lot of control over that. Like what it's doing is dependent entirely on the shape that you make here, and then the distortion, and then of course the EQ under the distortion. But I'll explain the EQ in a second because that's kind of important. But messing with the main bit. Come back, harmonic. No. Like it's going to make that kind of, like, this position is going to make that kind of warble the whole time. And if I want to change it, the pitch thickness will, if you increase it, it'll increase the speed of the warble. And if you decrease it, it'll decrease the speed of the warble. So I'm actually going to copy this value because I don't want to lose it. See that? And so I just played it with the drums, and then I moved it around until it felt right. And that's more or less how that's working. And now, okay, yeah, the EQ. So the EQ is actually this is all before the effects section. The effects that are listed here, the distortion, chorus, delay, and reverb, and compression, are all audio effects. They're not additive generation like the rest of this, like the unison and the filters and the phaser, prism, harmonizer, pluck, all that. That's all additive generation. It's actually also so is the EQ. And that's all going up before the effects. And so that means that the EQ changes you make are going before the distortion. And that's pretty important to note. And that's because, especially using the Q, or using any distortion setting, what frequencies are being pushed up more than others will determine determine the rhythmic qualities of the distortions. Like, just watch what happens. I'm going to save this state. December DNB drums and gooch DNG. I don't know what that means. Drums and grenade. I like that. State one. So you see how that affected the basically how the distortion interprets the bass. Ugh, words, I use them, I promise. Let's bring back the state. And of course, you can see this line here. This helpful line is determining, is showing you where the fundamental is of whatever note is playing at the time. So that's why I knew that if I put this up here, that when it went, if I were to increase this area of the EQ, that it would round out the sound more. It would be more about the fundamental, and less about the character of the sound, which is being accomplished in the higher frequencies. And like I said about all these all being additive generation, so is this. Like these are all. This is frequency based, so like it's you can see up here like this weird discoloration, brighter and darker. It's because it's louder or quieter in that frequency area, and it's not keyboard track, which means that it's always that area of the spectrum, but it's still being accomplished by bringing down or bringing up certain partials, harmonic partials. Now, those are all the basic ideas behind how these basses work. I've mentioned this a lot when in my recent Harmor things, and that's because like in the old school resampling processes, and also frequency splitting, when you want to make the res for some drum and bass, you frequency split and you apply different effects to the frequencies for also to keep the bass definition, but also to create difference in the character of the sound, the higher frequencies, the mids and the highs. And this is like solving for N for frequency splitting in that regard, because instead of it being like you have mids at one unison setting and the highs on one other unison setting and the lows with no unison setting, this is like each individual frequency has a different unison setting. And if it's smooth like this, like you'll get the result that I got. You can always experiment and get lots of weird, interesting ideas, but it's seriously like the solution. Why are things freezing? It's seriously like the solution to the equation of frequency splitting. That's why I said solve for N, because it works it's the ultimate end of that. And it's a very specific thing, but it's basically what's going on. And then of course you can frequency split it later. Like actually, as I mentioned here, I have a chorus running on the main bass, and then I also have a high split with more effects on it, creating this particular effect. Now in the chorus, I have it like not a whole 100%. I have the delay low as I can go, and kind of whatever. Like you can just look at this and just kind of come up with something yourself. But really, I didn't do this because I knew that it would do something that I wanted to do. I just did it because I felt like doing it. Also because I was trying to avoid doing resampling in this track. I didn't start off with that. Like I actually made the first bass being like, I think I'll resample this, but then like I experimented more with the pitch differences and that pitch thickness difference, and that worked out pretty good. But one of the things you do with resampling is that it's all about the stack, the restack, and the restack is you have detuned unison, distortion, and then detuned unison and distortion, and detuned unison and distortion, and you keep doing that until it either doesn't sound good or until it sounds awesome. And that's also, you remember when you do Harmor resampling, like if I were to record this and drop it into a Harmor, you can have this pitch thickness difference also applied to the resample. And like I've gotten some okay results with that. I'm more interested in what I can accomplish live, so to speak, as in these are all happening live. And although actually I think the last track that I did any actual resampling for was Third Watch, my glitch hop track, and it's more or less the same. So also something to note is that I said, detuned saws. That's the standard type, but I actually find that introducing square waves, this is mostly a squarish sound that's being created here. So don't be afraid of square waves. Square waves are awesome. Of course, when you distort it, it's going to become more of a square anyway. But there's that. Now this other one. This one I kept at with the fundamental engaged in unison, because I wanted that warble to be even. And the main warble that you hear is the result of the fundamental being pitch detuned and then distorted. So I kept that for this one because it's an accent. It's an accent bass. Now that effect that's going on here is a product of the fact that I let the bass continue for a while. Now, if you remember in the first pattern of bass, there are sections here, and like that's because the longer it goes on, the more crazy it gets. Like, and that's because of the pitch thickness difference. Because if we're all the same, it would just be the same warble forever. But because there's a difference, there's not. And that's also true for the this other bass here. And also, it'll get there faster the higher the pitch is. See, it actually took it a second to get there. So if I start off high and then go low, it'll arrive at that sort of squelch real quick. But I have to do it fast, because if you do it too long, then it sounds like what it actually is, which is a note that's just way too low. Now, this is just a slide note that's going on here. Again, you notice that how long or how short this descent is determines how the tail sounds, and that's because it spends more time at a higher frequency than it does at the lower frequency, which means that it reaches the farthest modulation difference faster. Or slower. So your modulation and your rhythmic capabilities for these kinds of sounds are determined mostly by what the pitch is doing. And there's not a huge amount you can do to control that, but you can automate the pitch thickness itself. Now, what that's going to do though is that it's not going to go straight from like the closed sound to the open sound. What is it doing? The closed sound to the open sound. It's going to go, as you increase it, it's going to start modulation, and then as you get higher, it's going to modulate faster. So that means that instead of it modulating all the way open to the point where you set the end of the automation, it's going to arrive there before you do it. It's kind of like swinging around something at the end of a string. Like, you may have already aimed it to be where you want it to be, but it's not going to get there until it gets there, or it might get there faster depending on if you're trying to change direction. So it's like it's a little bit springy. It's not 100%, and that's what pissed me off for the longest time about this about like resampling in general and like tech, is that you just don't have as much control as you'd like over it. And like I felt like as is because I was missing something, and I still could be missing a lot of things, but like you just don't. And like I have a filter on some of these. I disengaged it, but like you could put filters on the end of the the filters inside Harmor are all before the distortion, so it doesn't actually have sort of effect you might imagine that it would, but you can still use those. And you can have a little bit additional modulation, but the primary modulation that you hear is a product of the sound just doing what it's going to do based on the pitch thickness setting. So like your modulation is 100% the result of the unison settings. And then also the unison harmonic unison pitch thickness across the various spectrums. So that's pretty much that. I'll put up some presets in the description for you to download so you can mess with them. This is a track that I'm working on. I have no idea what it's going to sound like when I'm done with it. If you're curious, this going on down here, it's actually a break that someone on the EDM production forums gave me, and I think it's cool. I'm using it mostly for the ride, and that's why I tie-passed. The actual drums are all these. Every single one of these are samples that I got out of the Groove Machine sample library. It's over here, and yeah. Might change this, but anyway, if you have any questions about this, ask me, and I will answer them to the best of my abilities. There will be presets, and yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this was useful to you. Good day.